This is the story of the Beastie Boys. New York, 1981, the dawn of cassette tapes and MTV, and the end of the disco era. A group of kids obsessed with the vibrant downtown punk rock scene find family in each other, frequenting CBGBs and other punk venues weekly. One day it dawns on them, why don't we start our own band? And thus, the Beastie Boys were born. The next couple of years saw shifts in personnel, finally settling on the trinity of Adam Yauch, also known as MCA, Adam Horowitz, known as Ad Rock, and Michael Diamond, Mike D. Evolving from hardcore punk to punk hip-hop fusion, these three white Jewish kids from Brooklyn helped birth hip-hop as we know it today. It seemed unlikely at the time, but these kids would go on to change the world and are forever immortalized in American music history, stated Chuck D of Public Enemy at their 2012 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. They led and lead by example. They were and still are one of the greatest live acts in music. How can we not learn from the way this group has challenged the dimensions in the music business, how they made up their own rules about what it means to be world-class hip-hop heads? Following a stint with Madonna in 1985 on her Like a Virgin tour, the boys met up with Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons. Def Jam Records was created, and in 1996, the Beastie Boys released their first major LP, Licensed to Ill. Undoubtedly assisted by their Caucasian heritage, Licensed to Ill became the first rap LP to hit #1 on the pop charts, and Def Jam, flush with the money that Licensed to Ill brought in, went on to become one of the most important record labels in music history. Notable artists on Def Jam include Jay-Z, former CEO, Public Enemy, Run DMC, The Roots, Nas, and Logic, among legions of others. Highly influenced by Rick Rubin, the Beastie Boys embodied a caricature, hard-partying, womanizing frat boys who placed a giant inflatable penis on stage with them during their Licensed to Ill tour. Accidentally spawning the origins of gangsta rap, it was stated of them by Brooklyn-born novelist Jonathan Latham, if gangsta rap is identifiable by first-person crime narrative, misogyny, drug and alcohol glorification, and over-the-top violence, then they had done it for sure. Exhausted and demoralized from the tour, the band seemed doomed to break up. Instead, they left Def Jam and set out to create their own image. By this time, hip-hop was evolving. The politically and socially conscious rap of Chuck D was influencing their vision of what music could and should be. Stated by MCA, so many people are unaware of the oppression that still goes on to this day of Blacks, all of the time. He brought some whole new perspectives on that for a lot of people, myself included, affected my thinking a lot. The boys took a hiatus from each other, and MCA found himself snowboarding in Utah. Dropping copious amounts of acid while living on the mountain, MCA started crafting their next album, Paul's Boutique. Considered a landmark in hip-hop recording due to its large array of sampling and intricate use of multi-layering, which was a novelty in this early era. Paul's Boutique is ranked number 156 on Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time. This also saw the beginning of MCA's evolution as a lyricist and spiritual being, demonstrated on the track A Year and a Day. And I am going to the limits of my ultimate destiny, feeling as though somebody were testing me, he who sees the end from the beginning of time. During the recording of Paul's Boutique, the boys were eating at Lowry's Prime Rib every night. But following this, Adam Yauch visited India and became vegetarian. He began seeing a Los Angeles-based holistic healer, quit drugs and alcohol, and sought ways to tap into spiritual energy without mind-altering substances. 1992 saw the release of Check Your Head, where the Beastie Boys returned to their roots and began playing live instruments on stage again. On this album, MCA drops the lyrics to Namaste, which means, the light in me honors the light in you. a dreamy soundscape track that closes out the album, stating, "And then a voice spoke in my head, and she said, 'Dark is not the opposite of light, it's the absence of light.' And I thought to myself, she knows what she's talking about." During this time period, MCA infamously smashes his gun in a music video, and following the album release, Adam Yauch, seeking to further his spiritual journey, goes trekking in Nepal. It was there that Yauch met Tibetans in exile from the Chinese communist oppression of their native land. He fell in love with their culture and their peaceful, nonviolent ways. Finding them to be the most advanced culture mentally, Yauch stated, "I think that Tibetans in general are really centered in the heart, coming from a real warm place, real compassion. I think that all of the years that Tibet spent focused on Buddhism kind of affected the collective consciousness of Tibet and just kind of stayed in. It's so deeply inlaid in the culture." Following this trip, Yauch was eager to make amends for his blatantly sexist lyrics and earlier obnoxious behavior. 1994 saw the release of Ill Communication, where the Beastie Boys sampled chanting monks on the tracks Shambhala and Bodhisattva Vow. On this album, the first track, Sure Shot, brings one of their finest moments when MCA raps, "I want to say a little something that's long overdue. The disrespect to women has got to be through. To all the mothers and the sisters and the wives and the friends, I want to offer my love and respect to the end." The boys decide to donate the proceeds of the two tracks that sampled monks to monasteries in Tibet and created the Milarepa Fund, named after an 11th century Tibetan singer who transformed from a murderer as a young man into an accomplished Buddha. This nonprofit fund raises money for and promotes awareness of the Tibetan independence movement. In 1994, the Beastie Boys are invited on the inauguration Lollapalooza Music Festival. MCA brought monks with him on the 2-month tour and set up info tents to pass out pro-Tibetan independence pamphlets. Though most of the artists didn't talk to the monks, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins did engage them, and later stated that that conversation saved him from a serious suicide attempt. Always seeking to do more, in 1996, Adam Yauch organized the first Tibetan Freedom Concert. Modeled after Live Aid, a 1985 concert that raised money for the Ethiopian famine, the show was a 2-day event held in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. Yauch called artists personally and asked them to perform for free. With notable names such as the Red Hot Chili Peppers, A Tribe Called Quest, Bjork, and Sonic Youth on the lineup, the concert drew 100,000 people and raised over $800,000 for the Tibetan freedom cause. The weekend was followed by a nonviolent protest in front of the Chinese embassy on Monday, which Yauch attended. The Tibetan Freedom Concerts continued until 2003 with a steady all-star lineup and have been immortalized as one of the great events in rock and roll history. Adam Yauch enjoyed a beautiful relationship with the Dalai Lama, and the Tibetan Freedom Concerts are featured on his official website. Never a band to rest on their laurels, the Beastie Boys shook the music industry in 1998 when Yauch became one of the first modern artists to publicly condone the US bombing of Iraq in Operation Desert Fox. In his MTV Video Music Awards speech, Yauch decried American racism against Muslims, foreshadowing the tumultuous times that have followed since 9/11. The following year, at the same VMA Awards, Ad Rock took the microphone and spoke up about the rampant sexual assault and rape present at 1999 Woodstock, calling upon artists to increase security at their shows. Following the tragedy of September 11th, 2001, the Beastie Boys hosted an all-star lineup called New Yorkers Against Violence. Proceeds went to New York Women's Foundation Disaster Relief Fund and the New York Association for New Americans September 11th Fund. Rolling Stone magazine lauded the concert, stating, In the shadow of terrorist violence, the Beasties celebrated New York as a muse, as a subject, as a hotbed of musical diversity, and as a home, with a moral passion that was downright inspiring. The benefit show featured performances by many of the same artists included in the Tibetan Freedom Concerts, as well as Yoko Ono and special guest artist Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, a Pakistani musician who performs devotional music of the Muslim Sufis. Disgusted by the war on terror, the Beastie Boys released In a World Gone Mad as a free download on their website, with lyrical references to the war in Iraq, George Bush, and Saddam Hussein. Though the Beastie Boys were dedicated activists, they never lost their fun-loving side, which is evidenced in their music videos, many of which MCA directed. Yauch went on to found Oscilloscope Records Laboratories, an independent film production company, distributor, and recording studios. Acclaimed releases include The Messenger, a 2009 war drama movie which won 2 Oscars, and the hilarious Banksy documentary, Exit Through the Gift Shop. Following their 2009 Bonnaroo performance, MCA noted his throat was hurting. He was tragically diagnosed with salivary parotoid gland cancer, which spread to his lymph nodes. Adam Yauch passed this earth on May 4th, 2012. He left behind his wife, Deshen, and his daughter, Luzol. Upon Yauch's death from cancer in 2012, a spokesman for the Dalai Lama stated, Adam had helped us raise awareness on the plight of the Tibetan people by organizing various Freedom for Tibet concerts, and he will be remembered by His Holiness and the Tibetan people. Continuing in the fight for justice, Ad Rock spoke at an impromptu anti-hate rally on November 20th, 2016, when post-election violence led to the spraying of swastikas at the Adam Yauch Memorial Park in New York. In his speech, Ad Rock called upon artists and citizens to stand up against hate. Then the crowd launched into a rendition of the famous spiritual We Shall Overcome, kicked off by Borough President Eric Adams' emboldened words, "We will not be afraid. We will turn our fear into action. I'll be damned if I allow any election to tear us down." The Beastie Boys continue to enjoy massive respect, both within the African American hip hop community and in the global sphere. Their legacy laid the foundations of hip hop and rock music as we know it today, and the memory of Adam Yauch lives on. To quote the lyrics of their 1999 song Root Down, Bob Marley was a prophet for the freedom fight. If dance and praise to the Lord, then I shall feel all right. It feels to play a little music. Tears running down my face because I love to do it. And no one can stop this flow from flowing on. A flow master in disaster with a sound that's gone. I'll give a little shout out to my dad and mom for bringing me into this world, and so on. In October 2018, the Remaining Boys released the Beastie Boys book, a 550-page tribute to a lifetime of music making and world changing. A #1 New York Times bestseller, the book is cited as a panoramic experience that tells the story of the Beastie Boys, a book as unique as the band itself. It was also named one of the best books of the year by Rolling Stone, The Guardian, and Paste. I shall end with Adam Yauch's beautiful words. Quote, I think every person has the ability to affect change through our every thought, our every word, the way we interact with other people. We are constantly affecting the world. Everybody has a responsibility for what they put out into the world. Rather than trying to figure out what other people should be doing, work on your own interactions in the world and whatever influence they have. All of it has an effect.